Welcome back to Never Did It. I'm Brad Garoon. I'm here with Jake Ziegler. On Never Did It, we look past the last 100 years of movie history in an effort to fill in some of our own movie blind spots. Today we're looking at the year 1994 at a much beloved director and a much reviled director and two of their great movies. Let's start with the movie that you recommended for me, Woody Allen's Bullets Over Broadway.
Yes, Bullets Over Broadway. 94 was right around the time I first started really getting into the Oscars and trying to watch the movies. And as we'll talk about in a little bit, this was had a pretty successful Oscar season that year. So it was one that I had seen. I probably haven't seen it since the 90s. So it was one that I had remembered really liking, and its reputation is still pretty strong, even given where the reputation of the director is at now. Still kind of regarded as, I think, one of his better movies. 1994 is such a big year with so many. It was a little bit tough to find ones that you hadn't seen because you've got these big classics like you've got your Pulp Fiction and Quiz Show and Shawshank Redemption and The Professional and a lot of these, The Crow, which all these movies you've seen all these. So it was a little bit of a challenge to find something you hadn't seen. And I know you've been working your way through Woody Allen movies as well. And like I said, why not put one of his good ones up on the podcast and let's talk about it.
Well, I've actually never seen The Crow, so that would have been fine too. But I'm glad. Yeah, but I'm glad you recommended Bullets Over Broadway because I quite enjoyed it.
It's a pretty fun story. John Cusack is the lead. He's a playwright, a young kind of hotshot playwright who doesn't want to compromise, do any sort of compromise on any of his work. But in order to get one of his plays produced, he ends up having to make one big compromise, which then leads to a series of further compromises all on down the line. And there's just such an amazing little cast of characters here. He has to cast a woman, Jennifer Tilly is the woman who plays this. He has to cast her because she's like a mobster's girlfriend, and the mobster is financing the play, even though she's just a terrible actor, and she's basically ruining the play. And with her is a man named Cheech, who is her bodyguard. He's sent there to protect her, but he's also a bit of a closeted theater aficionado, and he has some thoughts about how the play is going, and he ends up working with the writer to kind of fix certain parts of the screenplay and stuff. And it's a really interesting, it's kind of darkly funny. I mean, there's a lot of really funny lines in it, and some of it's just really dark, and there's no Woody Allen in it at all. He doesn't play one of the characters, although John Cusack is essentially playing him, but Woody himself is not in it. So I just think there's a lot of, like I said, really good stuff in this, and I think it held up pretty well. I think I just think it's a really good movie.
Yeah, some of it was a little bit hard for me to digest because it hit kind of close to home. Like the whole movie is about a guy who thinks he's this great artist, who then has to come to terms with the fact that his life experience has not been such that he can be a great artist. Cheech isn't so much of a theater aficionado as he is a guy who has had a real life filled with drama, so he knows what drama will work in the play, and he says it so gruffly in the beginning that no one listens to him, and then eventually, I think starting with Jim Broadbent's character, his Jim Broadbent's ever-expanding character, that is like, wait a second, that's actually quite good and would be good for the play. By the way, that little side storyline between Broadbent and Tilly was very, very funny. And the scene where they almost get caught, I was dying.
Broadbent, I forget how funny he can be sometimes. But yeah, he's really, really perfect in this. And this was probably the first movie I'd ever seen him in.
Oh, that makes sense. As far as 2025 in my Letterboxd stats goes, is my most watched actor because I watched all 4 Bridget Jones movies and Paddington in Peru and this. And so that's, we're only in March.
Yeah, he's mine too, because I watched the 3 Paddington movies and this, and then we watched the first Bridget Jones last night. So we're starting that series.
Oh, good. So maybe we'll do the Bridget Jones thing soon. Although by then I'll have forgotten all about them.
Keep notes, man.
My notes are my memories. I feel like that's what's important. And my Letterboxd reviews. In any event, so yeah, the movie is about Cusack coming to realize, spoiler alert, not that the plot is so, it's just like the ride that you want to go on with this. He's not actually that good at what he does, and that what he does, more importantly, that what he does doesn't resonate with other people. And that's sort of how I felt with Too Old to Date, which was a scripted, basically it was a radio play. It was a scripted radio podcast. It had a small audience, a bigger audience than Never Did It, I'll put it that way. And some of our fans were very passionate. But at the end of the day, 2 things happened. One, my writing partner got married, and then it stopped being so relevant. And I got married, and that stopped being so relevant. But moreover, I was like, oh, this is not resonating with as many people as I thought it would. And that was a tough pill to swallow. And I felt very connected to John Cusack's character here. Also, the screaming. He screams a lot more than Woody Allen does when Woody Allen plays the main character.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's also another one of the big main characters in this is Diane Wiest, plays an actress named, I want to get the actress because it's such a perfect, old actress name, Helen Sinclair, who was, very famous back in her day and is now, maybe not as famous and, could use a hit play to be in, but she doesn't exactly see it that way. She's kind of a delusional theater actor. But not she invented the part or anything, but she does it so perfectly, and she's so funny in this. And she ends up having a little romance with the John Cusack character with the writer character, which is leads to some very funny moments between the two of them. I mean, when she does her little don't speak. just don't speak. She does that too, and that keeps coming back. Everything, which is really, I mean, she's amazing in this. She won the Oscar for supporting actress in this, and I thought she was fantastic. And Jennifer Tilly was nominated for this too. I think Jennifer Tilly having to act, I mean, let's be honest, she's probably not like the world's greatest actor to begin with, but I think having to act like you're a bad actor is a very special skill that I don't think, maybe a lot of people can do like as well as she did it here, because she was just so perfect. The way like she didn't she's like, I don't understand that line, so I'm not going to say it. So, she was just really perfect. And again, we're, spoiler alerts for a 30-year-old movie, whatever, but I was really upset when Cheech ended up killing her because she was ruining the play. Which he continues to call his play, and then they have to compromise and call it our play, him and John Cusack. But like, that's what I mean when there was like just some like darkly comedic things, because it's the idea that someone would murder someone over ruining their words in a play is like just so absurdly but then it actually happens and you have to watch them too. It's like, it's just, I was really upset by that. I mean, I think it was narratively the right choice for the movie, and I think it helps, it's what would happen in this particular universe, but yeah, it was upsetting.
So I think you took that the way it's meant to be taken, and I think you responded to that the way it was meant to be responded to, because right after that, John Cusack is despondent. Even though it helps his play, John Cusack will be more successful now that Jennifer Tilly is gone. He's mortified and upset and angry at Cheech for doing it. I was like, John Cusack, shut up. Your play is better now. I was kind of relieved. I was identifying more with Cheech and like feeling very sympathetic for what Cheech was going through. And I'm like, Cheech murders people. Why shouldn't he murder this person? And then, of course, it leads to Cheech's death, which is like the climax of the film. But I have to wonder, like, what's wrong with me that I took it that way?
Let's talk about Chaz Palminteri too. I mean, this is probably the best role that he has ever been in. You think?
I don't know. A Bronx Tale is really, really good.
That's right. I haven't seen that probably since it came out. I probably rented it on VHS or something, but I mean, either way, it's one of his top, certainly one of the top performances of him. He was nominated for supporting actor for this. He really just embodies that character, like when he starts kind of making that turn into being the writer of the play. It's just a really kind of believable transition for him. It's like he kind of had this thing in him kind of all along, and it just finally starts coming out of him, and it's really fun to watch him. And like I said, he and Jennifer Tilly together, up until he murders her, are really like just funny together. Their chemistry is really good, is really strong. I really, really like him in this movie.
Yeah, there's also like some small roles cast really well and are really funny, like Rob Reiner as the other playwright, the like downtrodden. This role would absolutely be played by Fred Melamed if this movie were to come out today. And then Mary Louise Parker is like pretty good as Cusack's wife or girlfriend, not wife. He won't propose to her. And then who's the guy who plays the main? Is that Joe Vitarelli? I always knew him as the dad from Shallow Hal, from Gwyneth Paltrow's dad in Shallow Hal. He's quite good as like the big mobster. There's so many great little touches. That last scene between Rob Reiner, Mary Louise Parker, and John Cusack outside of Reiner's apartment is so funny.
Well, let's also give a little credit. Jack Warden has a small part in this too, and
right.
Firestein and Tracy Ullman is one of the actors in the play as well. And everything Tracy Ullman does is funny. I mean, she's of course the one with the little dog who annoys everybody, and she brings.
She only annoys Diane Wiest.
That's right. But she brings presents for everybody on the first day. She's that person. And she's she doesn't have a lot of lines, and she doesn't have a lot of effect on things. But it's just every time you see Tracy Ullman, for me, every time I see her, I'm glad to see her because she's so great.
Yeah, totally. I actually think Harvey Firestein was a little bit underutilized of all those people, but it's such a stacked cast that like, what can you do? Yeah, Jack Warden's so great. So we're finally putting the theater in the next room together, and we decided like we're gonna do 4 big movie posters, 2 of movies that we've seen discovered together, and 1 for each. So Annie's one for herself is Rear Window, my one for myself is Hopscotch, and together we have Perfect Days and Death on the Nile. So on the Death on the Nile poster, we have Jack Warden. His face is going to be forever in our home.
Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah. Cool. Oscars. You mentioned offhand all the acting Oscars. What else?
Yeah, it was one of the more nominated films that year. This is the Forrest Gump Pulp Fiction year, like I mentioned before. So I think just getting invited to this party is pretty good. It did not get a Best Picture nomination, although I think if there were 10 nominees that year, it certainly would have, because Woody Allen got nominated for director. It was also nominated Chaz Palminteri, supporting actor. Diane Wiest was the one winner from the movie and supporting actress. Jennifer Tilly was also nominated for supporting actress. Woody Allen for original screenplay, and then also the art direction and costume design were nominees. So that's a pretty successful night.
You get the feeling that like Woody Allen never really had a chance to win any directing awards because he'd won it in 78?
I mean, just the timing was never quite right. I mean, like in '94, like it's just put up there against Forrest Gump. No one's going to win Forrest. It's not like, well, we already gave Woody one. So everyone's like, we're giving it to Forrest Gump because we love it.
Did Zemeckis win?
Zemeckis did win director,
Okay.
yeah, and picture. And
okay, right on. So I recommended for you a very interesting movie in that it is Ang Lee's only movie fully filmed in his home country of Taiwan. And that's Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. And this movie is about, I recommended it because it's 1994 and it's tough to find movies that you haven't seen. Kind of surprised you hadn't seen it because it was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film that year.
Winner.
Oh, won. Well, even more so.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And also Ang Lee is just like dope and it's cool to watch his movies. I know you really like, I know you like Crouching Tiger. I know you like Life of Pi. I assume
Wait, I'm sorry, I lied. It did not win, but it was nominated.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that.
Yeah.
And I assume that you like Hulk a little bit, I guess, maybe. I don't know.
I remember being fairly indifferent to it. I don't know if I've seen it since it came out, like the one time, though.
And I love food movies. I mean, we've done a few food movies on the show before. We did Jiro Dreams of Sushi, Tampopo. So I just think food movies are so cool. So finally we can do a food movie that's not from Japan. It's from Taiwan. And the food in this movie is immaculate. So it's about this family, the patriarch of which is a chef. He's a single father. His kids are all adults now. His 3 daughters. They all live with him. And the oldest is a teacher who's like very religious and is always upset about this guy that dumped her in college.
It was like 9 years prior to or something. It's like a really long time.
Yeah. And then the middle daughter is like very motivated career-wise. She works for what, a real estate company or an airline?
It's an airline.
All right. Yep. And then she has this like real estate deal going. She's about to move out of the house because of it. And then his youngest daughter works at a Wendy's and she's a student.
Yeah.
And it's really just like a domestic drama about what's going on with this family, how their lives intertwine, how the girls are all kind of petty with each other. And then in between all of this, the dad has an interesting, like, is he sick? Is he not sick question. His best friend, who's one of his colleagues at this kitchen, banquet hall.
Restaurant. Is it a restaurant?
I guess they just cater the banquet hall. He gets sick during the movie, and then the dad keeps going to the hospital. So there's wonder of like, is the dad getting sick? And at the same time, is he dating this woman whose granddaughter he's making these lunches for? It's very sweet. And then there's a fun twist at the end regards that, which we can totally spoil because it's a 30-year-old movie, but let's wait a minute. I thought it was so cool, and the food looks amazing, and they keep doing the food throughout the movie. What did you think of Eat, Drink, Man, Woman?
Yes, really, really liked this movie. And like I said, I should have probably seen it by now because even though it did not win the foreign film Oscar that year, it still is, if you look at the other 5 that were nominated, or the other 4 that were nominated, I mean, have you heard of Burnt by the Sun, Before the Rain, Strawberry and Chocolate, or Farinelli? No.
That's not a one, but to be fair, I wasn't super familiar with Eat, Drink, Man, Woman before I watched it on a whim because it was on Tubi like a year ago. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's not anymore. And also I was familiar with it because Ang Lee, at this point now, he's got like 14 features, and there's like 2 that I haven't seen, and they're his first 2 that I haven't seen. So yeah, I really like Ang Lee. So I think maybe it's just availability was a reason that I had never seen this, or just had never gotten to it. I still remember, like I said, I was really getting into the Oscars. I think this was really the first year I got into it because I remember really, really going nuts for Pulp Fiction and Quiz Show and Shawshank and Pulp Fiction stuff. So I really remember this because I remember watching the awards show, and even though I wasn't familiar with any of the foreign film nominees, I remember Billy Crystal made a joke about it. The title, he mentioned, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, which I believe were the words Arnold Schwarzenegger said the first time he asked Maria Shriver out on a date. And it's just like, right? Like, it's like such a good joke, and it's 30 years old, and I still remember him saying that about a movie that I hadn't seen. But that was really like my experience with it. And, I was pretty sure I was going to like it, and I did. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, the food, just from that opening scene, like the opening scene is like one of their Sunday dinners where they gather, and he just makes all this just amazing looking food. I don't know what any of it is, but it just looks incredible, and it made me hungry and made me want to eat it. The story is interesting too, just the way that the things that happen to the daughters and how they react to them and how they react to each other, and their relationship with the father and his relationship, like I said, with he's not really their uncle, but he, like I said, he's the co-worker at the restaurant, Uncle Wen, the kind of everything that happens with them. It's just, yeah, it's really, really well put together movie, really well directed, really well acted. Yeah, strong movie. I'm really glad we did this one.
What did you think of the big twist at the end?
I didn't see it coming, honestly. Like I didn't think he was going to end up being with the older woman, just because I think they were kind of implying that so heavily. I was like,
she was awful.
Oh, she was insufferable, yeah. But you know what? She helped him in some way, which I think is so weird because, yeah, I mean, she was super obnoxious, but I think she helped him get to wherever he was, going to end up going, and was kind of it was kind of someone that he could talk to, which he didn't have a lot of that in his life. He didn't exactly talk to his daughters, about anything going on in his life so much. So she did provide kind of an important role, but yeah, she's obnoxious. I mean, she's like one of the obnoxious people in Five Easy Pieces. That was one of the scenes that I thought of. Like that's like
great.
she would fit right in that scene right there. But then yeah, at the end, I mean, love is love is love. I don't know. I didn't see it coming at all, but I wasn't like mad at it. I don't think it like betrayed anything about the movie. Anything that had happened before that at all.
It just reminded me a lot of my dad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I had that thought too.
My dad has a younger wife. All right, cool. And so nominated for best foreign film, and back then foreign films very rarely were nominated for any other awards.
Right. Yeah, it would happen once in a while, like some Fellini stuff or like some Bergman stuff. But yeah, it didn't happen all that often. So yeah, that was the only one it was up for. The film that won is a Russian film called Burnt by the Sun, which I do recall the title of. So maybe there's still some reputation there, but certainly not at the level of Eat, Drink, Man, Woman or Ang Lee.
Totally. What's your favorite Ang Lee movie? Gemini Man?
Yes, I really love Gemini Man. I think Will Smith was just so terrific. And no, Gemini Man is like probably the worst. But yeah, let me pull this up because I was just looking at this today. Like I said, the only ones I haven't seen are his first two. I think probably, I mean, the best one is still, I think, Brokeback Mountain.
I like Brokeback Mountain a lot, but my favorite is Crouching Tiger.
Crouching Tiger would be my number two. I think it's almost maybe even like a 1A and 1B sort of thing because, again, they're so wildly different, but both really great at what they're doing. Those are really good. There's a really, really good one that gets overlooked a lot with Kevin Kline and Joan Allen and Christina Ricci and Sigourney Weaver called The Ice Storm.
Yeah, it's good.
Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's depressing, but it's good.
Very depressing, yeah, but I think that's really good. He did one called Lust Caution that I really liked. And I think Life of Pi is wonderful also. I really like that a lot. Gemini Man's pretty bad. Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk is meh. Taking Woodstock is pretty meh. Hulk, I have that at 2.5 stars also. And then his movie with Jewel and Tobey Maguire, That Ride with the Devil, that's pretty meh. But then Sense and Sensibility is pretty good. So he definitely hits way more than he misses.
So you haven't seen The Wedding Banquet?
I have not, but I know they're remaking it, so that's probably I'm going to try to find it and watch it before the remake comes out.
Well, good luck, because I just looked, and on Amazon, the Blu-ray is going for $694.
Get the frick out of here!
And the DVD for $35. So if you could find this in a bargain bin, I say grab it.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I guess that's why. I wonder why those are so hard to find.
They're out of print.
Yeah, but why though? His first movie was Pushing Hands. You can rent that in several places.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some of the stuff's crazy. Like, I'm still trying to get my hands on on a physical copy of every Walter Matthau movie. And the one that's like really tough for me to find is it's got two names. A lot of his TV movies have two names, and this one has two. It's An Incident in Baltimore and Against Her Will, and it's on a double DVD, a double feature DVD with another movie that I forget. But the cheapest one is like $65 that I can find online. So whenever I see DVDs anywhere, I go looking for it just in case it's there. But like, they probably only made like a few hundred of them. There's probably only like 6 in circulation.
Yeah, it's just why not streaming? I wonder.
No, it streams. I've seen it.
The Wedding Banquet?
What? Oh no, The Wedding Banquet I haven't seen.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Sorry, I was talking about Wedding Banquet.
I would just mean in general, but yeah. I mean, these are these things that like Tubi might get the rights to it for like 6 months, and then it's there for 6 months, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Shall we do our best of 1994 list?
Yes, let's do that. Oh, I see a Wedding Banquet DVD for $13.
There you go. I might grab that if I were you.
Yeah, I think I will. Good call. Okay, I'm gonna do that. Anyhow, yeah, let's do the tops. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So real quick, run through my 20 through 11. So Mike Binder's Blank Man is number 20, starring Damon Wayans. I've always had a real soft spot in my heart for this really weird superhero movie. Number 19 is Star Trek Generations. I've learned that Star Trek fans and movie fans in general don't like this one, but again, saw this in theaters when it came out. I was a kid, 12 years old. No, less probably. I would have been 10. Yeah, and I thought it was awesome. I still kind of think it's pretty cool. Number 18 is what I mean. Number 18, Naked Gun 33 and a Third, The Final Insults. Love these Naked Gun movies. This one was very formative in my puberty years because of Anna Nicole Smith. Number 17, John Waters' Serial Mom. Number 16, Airheads. This was directed by Michael Lehman. I used to think this was even higher on my list, but I watched it last year and was like, maybe this isn't quite as good as I thought it was, but still pretty entertaining with Steve Buscemi, Adam Sandler, and Brendan Fraser. Number 15 is Leon the Professional, which I rewatched recently because I wanted to do my Defending Luc Besson list, which was part of an episode we did with Jeff Richardson.
We did the Messenger Joan of Arc, because Besson had done the Messenger, which you really like.
Totally. Number 14, we just talked about it, Ed Wood. Number 13, Time Cop, my favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Number 12, Forrest Gump, which I actually think is kind of underrated now. Same goes for my number 11, Shawshank Redemption. I feel like there's a lot of backlash against these movies because they're high up on the IMDb popular list.
Yeah, I know there's Forrest Gump backlash. There has been, ever since it came up. I didn't realize there was Shawshank backlash.
Yeah, I think people are just like, oh, Shawshank, obvious. So what an obvious choice.
Yeah.
Now my top 10, number 10, Bullets Over Broadway by Woody Allen. We talked about it at great length. Not great length. It's a pretty short episode, but at length in this episode, I think we hit everything we needed to say about it. Very, very fun movie. Number 9, Greedy by Jonathan Lynn, who also directed My Cousin Vinny. This stars Kirk Douglas and Michael J. Fox. Kirk Douglas is the patriarch of a big family, and they all think he's about to die and they want his money. Michael J. Fox has gotten out and isn't one of these like leeches trying to get all the money from Kirk Douglas, but he gets drawn back in by the rest of the family members. It's really underseen, but also just based on Letterboxd reviews, really underrated. I think people don't like older comedies. And granted, comedy is really contingent on the time that it came out, but this one still hits for me. My number 8 is Isao Takahata's Pompoko, the kind of forgotten Studio Ghibli movie. If you are interested in seeing cartoon raccoon testicles, there's a lot of them in this. They have giant balls, and that's how they fight for their freedom. This movie is unhinged. Isao Takahata, the most underrated anime director ever. What a lunatic he was. My number 7 is Eat, Drink, Man, Woman by Ang Lee. What a great movie. My number 6 is James Cameron's True Lies, which has certainly found its audience now. What a great movie. One of Schwarzenegger's best. Jamie Lee Curtis was really great in this. And then Bill Paxton just steals the show. Number 5 is a movie I know you don't like. And we talked about this at great length in our Coen Brothers episode, but it's The Hudsucker Proxy. I love this one. I think Paul Newman is outstanding in it. My number 4 is Jan de Bont's Speed. Top-notch action. Keanu Reeves' breakout as far as I'm concerned. It was for me anyway. I'd never seen like My Own Private Idaho or Parenthood at that point, and certainly didn't think he'd be an action star. Amazing performances from Dennis Hopper, from Sandra Bullock, from Jeff Daniels. Kind of a perfect action movie. My number 3 is The Lion King, which we just talked about in our DreamWorks episode because the director of The Lion King also directed Peabody and Sherman, another really good animated movie. But The Lion King was not nominated for Best Picture because they made animated feature after Beauty and the Beast, right?
They didn't make animated feature until 10 years after Beauty and the Beast.
Then it's crazy that The Lion King didn't get nominated for Best Picture. That's wild.
I know. Yeah, and I think people were really expecting it to, especially after Beauty and the Beast. And especially when you consider like, okay, I know, sorry, we're kind of interrupting the list here, but the Best Pictures, it was Forrest Gump 1, and then it was Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption, Quiz Show. All of those make sense, right? And then the 5th one was Four Weddings and a Funeral, which is a good movie, but like...
Yeah, Curtis has like really stood the test of time in general, right? Like him as a filmmaker and writer he just made That Christmas this year.
Yeah.
And Tarantino seems to have quit the movie business prematurely. So, and Zemeckis made Here. I don't know, Four Weddings and a Funeral, you got to give one to the girlies. I think The Lion King is a better movie, but...
And a bigger movie and a more historically like... Yeah, relevant.
For
but
sure.
I do like Four Weddings and a Funeral. I think it's a good, funny movie.
Yeah, it did give us Love Actually, which is kind of a bummer. But I know you like Love Actually.
I do, but after I watched the pitch meeting on that one, I was like, that's one. Like usually when he does his pitch meetings, like even though I still like the movie afterwards, like he's right, but like I still like the movie, blah blah, whatever. It's just funny. I watched the one for Love Actually, like, oh, this might not be a good movie.
He's so funny.
He's perfect, yeah.
My number 2 is Pulp Fiction, which I hope is not sacrilege because my number 1 is Quiz Show, which, guys, come on. You got to watch Quiz Show. Now, we've talked about Quiz Show a lot on this show because we love it so hard. It's directed by Robert Redford, stars Ralph Fiennes and John Turturro as like these two totems of different walks of life in 1940s New York.
50s. It was after Marty had won Best Picture.
Right. That was the big plot point of the movie.
Yep.
How could I not know Marty?
Marty is my favorite movie. I saw it 3 times at the theater. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah.
Christopher McDonald is amazing in this. Is Jack Benny, not called Jack Benny in the movie, but he's playing Jack Benny. Mm-hmm. It's so good. Man, check out Quiz Show. Really underrated. I think it's better than Pulp Fiction.
Scorsese has a fun little role in that movie too as an actor, which you don't like see very often.
Yeah.
Nothing but love for Quiz Show, as I'll mention when I get to my list.
There you go. Go for it.
All right. So we'll go real quick with the honorable mentions, the 20 through 11. First, I have the John Grisham adaptation of The Client, which was a book I really enjoyed at the time. The movie with Tommy Lee Jones and Susan Sarandon was pretty good. Number 19, I have Ron Howard's journalism comedy drama, The Paper. Number 18 is the aforementioned Four Weddings and a Funeral. Like I said, I do quite enjoy the movie. It was the first thing I saw Hugh Grant in, and I had already seen Andy McDowell in Groundhog Day. So I mean, between Groundhog Day and this is like, well, Andy McDowell for life. Number 17 is a movie that was filmed many years before 1994, but didn't end up coming out until then due to like studio. It was Orion Studios, I believe. We went bankrupt, and the movie sat on the shelf for a little while. It's called Blue Sky. It was kind of famous at the time because Jessica Lange won her second Oscar for it. 16 is another Oscar-nominated film, Paul Newman in Nobody's Fool. Bruce Willis also has a pretty integral part in this movie, but he very unselfishly asked that his name be taken off the advertisements because he didn't want people to think that it was, quote, a Bruce Willis movie because it's a quiet, character drama, and he's, Paul Newman's the main star. So he thought having his name on that would create confusion. So I think that's pretty cool. Number 15, I have Neil Jordan's Interview with the Vampire. Just a ridiculous fun. I love, Pitt and Tom Cruise and Antonio Banderas and Christian Slater. Speaking of fun, we've talked so much about how much Mel Gibson sucks, but my number 14 movie is Maverick, which I think is just such a fun movie. Him and Jodie Foster are great in it, and James Garner, who was in the Maverick show, pops up in this one too, and it's just a really, really funny movie. Number 13, we talked about a lot, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman. Really, really excellent movie. Number 12, I have Oliver Stone's controversial Natural Born Killers, which is just a kind of wild, crazy movie that, your mileage may vary. My number 11, James Cameron's True Lies, which, is just, Bill Paxton is just so funny in it. Tom Arnold is really funny in it. Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis are great. Yeah, just a great, great action movie. Number 10, I have Leon the Professional, which I think is one of those movies that's both like simultaneously really, really good and also like kind of a bit overrated, where like I don't think it's one of like the greatest films of all time or anything, but I do think it's really, really cool. Also Jean Reno's breakout here. Natalie Portman was really good in this, very young, but this list is going to be a little bit familiar. Number 9, I have Jan de Bont's Speed, otherwise known as the bus that couldn't slow down, and one of the greatest Simpsons one-liners ever. I've actually been talking about showing this movie to my kid. She's, almost 13, so talking about trying to start watching R-rated movies, and we thought Speed might be a good one.
Has she ever seen anyone's head fall off in a movie?
I don't think so.
So that's like the big thing.
That's the big thing. That's the only thing I could think of that would be like even, like objectionable. But, I think I was watching Speed when I was 13. I was watching lots of stuff when I was 13. So
fair enough. It's
just weird when it's your kid. Like you start thinking about your own kid versus what you did. It's like, maybe should I have been doing that? Like,
right.
Anyway, Speed has one that has come up because there's just really only that one thing. Other than that, there's probably just like language and stuff, which is, like I said, she's 13. She rides the bus. She's heard it, Number 8, I have Forrest Gump, which, like you said, I think is a little bit underrated at this point. It's not perfect, and there's certainly stuff about it I would change, but the fact that they got a good, entertaining, watchable movie out of that train wreck of a novel, I think is almost miraculous.
Because they changed everything.
Literally, like everything. When I read the book, I was like, this doesn't even seem like the same thing. It's so strange that what they got from the movie, or how they got the movie out of that book, because it's not at all the same. So weird. 7, I have, again, another movie that I think is both very, very good and overrated, like Shawshank Redemption. I think Shawshank Redemption is excellent. But yeah, it's not like, it's always at like in the top 1 or 2 on the IMDb, and I don't think it's that great. I do think that the poster thing at the end is a little bit hard to just, hand wave away.
I find it interesting that movie is so popular, like, and so universal and so widely seen when there's like a lot of attempted rape in it. I'm just surprised by that.
It is surprising, but it's good. Tim Robbins is great in it. Morgan Freeman's great in it. I have it as my number 7 movie of the year. So obviously I do really like it, but I do, like I said, the top 1 or 2 movies of all time, I would say no. Number 6, one that you mentioned, is Ed Wood. One of the few Johnny Depp movies I would still probably rewatch at this point. I love the Ed Wood story. I think Martin Landau's great in it. Bill Murray, George Animal Steel. Fun cast, fun aesthetic to that movie. My number 5, we talked about quite a bit. Woody Allen's Bullets Over Broadway. Enjoyed this even more than I remembered, even more than I even thought I would. I think it's really, really clever, really, really funny. I think probably one of my favorite Woody Allen movies. Number 4, I have one that I for some reason thought you had seen and haven't, and I think you would like this too, is The Crow, which is just a great movie. I rewatched it recently. My wife had never seen it, so we did it on Halloween a couple of years ago. The story, of course, is tragic. The way Brandon Lee died, on set, with an accidental, got shot is just so tragic. And I think that has helped the movie last as long as it has. But also, really, like, the story is just really good. The aesthetic is really cool. The soundtrack is amazing. It's got all these like, kind of hard rock, heavy metal bands of the 90s. It's very much a product of its time, but it also holds up. It's cool. The top three is going to be real familiar, because number 3 I have The Lion King, and then I have Quiz Show at 2 and Pulp Fiction at 1. I mean, Pulp Fiction was like such a huge deal for me, because I remember, like I said, I was kind of getting into the Oscars by this point, and I had knew that Pulp Fiction was up for Best Picture and some other things. Like I remember being in a hotel with my family somewhere, and we're like, oh, let's watch a movie tonight. And like, guys, can we watch Pulp Fiction? Because it was like, that was when like hotels got movies way before you could get them on video. Like, well, let's watch that one, and we watched it. I remember my parents sent me out of the room because they knew what was about to happen when the GIMP comes out. So like they sent me out of the room for that. So I didn't see it the first time I watched it, but then of course when it came out on video 6 months later, whatever it was, my friends and I watched it right away. Say what you will about Tarantino at this point and all the things that he's stolen from, but like as a 12, 13-year-old in 1994 or 5, I didn't know any of that stuff. So like I'm watching Pulp Fiction and this thing's just blowing my mind. I mean, it's funny and it's violent and it takes place out of sequence, and there's all these just long monologues of things. And I hadn't seen Reservoir Dogs at the time, so like it was just a whole introduction to a thing that I just had didn't know that movies could do. Like, so it was like a really formative movie for me, and I still think holds up pretty well. My wife and I will quote it every once in a while, just like get giggle fits with each other because some of it's just so ridiculously funny.
Hard to argue with any of that. Clearly, I didn't see Pulp Fiction until I was a little bit older. Like I said, I was 10 at the time, and I read the script first, which means I would have had to have been at least 14 when I got my hands on that. And then it would have been like a year or two after that, or maybe it was right after that. Maybe I came home from New York and was like, I got to watch this movie. But it was my mom's. I remember she came back from the theater and was like, that's the best thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I was always super curious about it. And it's my number 2 movie of the year. I mean, it's great. It's interesting to say what you will about Tarantino stealing stuff. Like, what are movies if not iterating on the movies that came before? It's funny. I see like reviews of certain movies that I think are interesting because of how they're iterating on old movies. People are like, oh, I just didn't understand this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I'm begging you to watch something else. Like, watch more movies. So that's that. Anyway, that's it for 1994. We'll be back next week with a look at the movies of 1977 and 2 of the Titans, the absolute epic, the absolute tippy top of film bro culture directors.
The zenith, if you will.
The zenith, the apex predators. See you next time.